The rain poured down on the empty street as Keisha Williams stepped out of her sleek black car. Her designer heels clicked against the wet pavement as she approached the old Victorian house she had just purchased for her latest real estate project. The house stood dark and lonely, its broken shutters hanging like tired eyes. Weeds grew wild in the front yard, and the paint peeled from the walls like old skin. As Keisha reached for the rusty gate, a small voice cut through the storm like a knife. "Don't go in there, lady. Please don't go in." She turned to see a young boy, no more than 10 years old, standing under a broken streetlight. His clothes were too big for his thin frame, and his sneakers had holes that let the rain soak through. His dark eyes were wide with fear, and his small hands shook as he pointed at the house. "What did you say?" Keisha asked, walking closer to the boy. "That house," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Bad things happen in there. Real bad things. My mama told me before she—" He stopped talking and looked down at his feet. Keisha felt something cold crawl up her spine. She had bought hundreds of houses in her career as a real estate mogul, but something about this boy's warning made her stomach twist. The way he looked at the house, like it was a monster waiting to swallow her whole. "What's your name, honey?" she asked gently, crouching down to his level. "Marcus," the boy said, still not looking up. I stay around here sometimes. That house has been empty for years, but people still hear things. Crying, screaming, and sometimes—" He finally looked up at her, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "Sometimes people go in and don't come out the same." The wind picked up, making the old house creak and groan. A shutter banged against the wall like a heartbeat. Keisha had planned to go inside tonight to start planning the renovation, but now she wasn't so sure. "Where are your parents, Marcus?" she asked. The boy's face crumpled. "My mama's gone. Been gone for 3 months now. And my daddy. I don't know where he is. I've been staying wherever I can find a safe place." Keisha's heart broke looking at this child. She thought about her own daughter, safe and warm at home with the nanny. How could she drive away and leave this boy out in the rain? "Come on," she said, standing up and holding out her hand. "Let's get you somewhere dry and warm. We can talk about the house later." Marcus hesitated, then slowly took her hand. As they walked toward her car, he kept looking back at the house, as if making sure it wasn't following them. Neither of them noticed the shadow that moved across an upstairs window, or the way the front door seemed to creak open just a little bit more. The next morning, Keisha sat in her office high above the city, but her mind kept drifting back to Marcus. She had taken him to a hotel for the night and made sure he had food and clean clothes. Now, as she looked out at the skyline, she couldn't stop thinking about his warning. Her assistant, Janelle, knocked on the door. "Miss Williams, I found some information about that house you bought on Maple Street." Keisha's stomach tightened. What kind of information? Janelle sat down across from her, holding a thick folder. "It's not good. The house has a history. Over the past 20 years, 3 families have lived there. Each family had something terrible happen to them." "What do you mean terrible?" "The first family lost their youngest daughter. She fell down the stairs and died. The second family's son disappeared one night and was never found. The third family—" Janelle paused, her voice getting quieter. "The mother had a mental breakdown. She claimed the house was making her see things that weren't there. She ended up in a psychiatric hospital." Keisha felt her mouth go dry. "And Marcus's family? That's the strange part. I couldn't find any record of a family living there recently. But I did find something else." Janelle pulled out a newspaper clipping. 3 months ago, a woman named Angela Davis was found dead in an alley not far from the house. She had a young son who went missing after her death. Keisha's hands shook as she took the newspaper clipping. The woman in the photo looked young and tired, but she had kind eyes. "This is Marcus's mother?" "I think so. And Miss Williams, there's something else. Angela Davis used to work as a housekeeper. She cleaned houses for wealthy families. The police report says she was acting strange before she died, talking about voices and shadows." Keisha closed her eyes. She had built her fortune by buying old houses, fixing them up, and selling them for profit. But she had never encountered anything like this. What am I supposed to do with this information? Maybe you should sell the house, Janelle suggested. Cut your losses and move on to another project. But Keisha couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, alone on the streets. And she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than just a haunted house. That afternoon, she found Marcus sitting in a small park, sharing a sandwich with a stray dog. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart ache. "Miss Keisha," he called out. "I didn't think you'd come back." She sat down next to him on the bench. "I told you I would. And I keep my promises." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the dog eat. Finally, Marcus spoke up. "You're going to ask me about my mama, aren't you?" Keisha nodded. "If you're ready to talk about it." Marcus took a deep breath. She wasn't always sad. Before we moved near that house, she used to sing while she cooked. She used to tell me stories about when she was little. But after we moved there... He trailed off. "What happened after you moved there?" "She started having bad dreams. She'd wake up screaming about shadows and voices. She said the house was calling to her, trying to pull her inside. I thought she was just stressed about work and money. But then she started going to the house at night." Keisha felt a chill run down her spine. Going to the house? But it was empty. That's what I told her. But she said she could hear children crying inside. She said she had to help them. Marcus's voice broke. "The night she died, she told me she was going to the house one more time. She said she figured out how to help the children, and then everything would be okay." Keisha couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about Marcus's story and the newspaper clipping. Angela Davis had been trying to help children in an empty house. But what children? And why did she think they needed help? The next morning, she decided to do something she had never done before. She drove to the library and started researching the history of the house on Maple Street. What she found made her blood run cold. The house had been built in 1924 by a wealthy family named the Harringtons. They had 3 children who died in a fire in 1928. After that, the house was sold to different families, but none of them stayed long. Every family reported strange occurrences. Children's voices, cold spots, and the sound of crying. But the most disturbing part was what she found in the old newspapers from the 1960s. A woman named Ruby Johnson, who worked as a maid for several wealthy families, had been found dead near the house. The police report said she had been acting strangely, claiming she could hear children calling for help. In the 1980s, another woman named Carol Washington, who also worked as a housekeeper, had died in similar circumstances. She too had been heard talking about children who needed help. Keisha realized the pattern. Every 20 years or so, a woman who worked taking care of other people's children in homes would become obsessed with the house. They would hear children crying and feel compelled to help them. Then they would die under mysterious circumstances. And now Marcus's mother, Angela, had become the latest victim. Keisha drove to the park where she had left Marcus with some money for food. She found him sitting under a tree, reading a book he had gotten from a library. "Marcus," she said, sitting down next to him, "I need to ask you something important. Did your mama ever mention hearing children crying?" Marcus looked up from his book, his eyes suddenly wide with fear. "How did you know that? She used to wake up at night crying, saying she could hear babies crying and nobody was helping them. She said it was breaking her heart. Did she ever say anything else about the children?" "She said they were scared and alone. She said their mamas had left them, and they didn't understand why." Marcus's voice got quieter. "She said she knew how they felt because her mama left her when she was little too." Keisha felt pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. "Marcus, do you know what your mama did for work?" "She cleaned houses for rich people. She took care of their kids sometimes too when the parents were busy. She was real good with kids. She used to say that all children deserved to feel safe and loved, no matter what." That night, Keisha couldn't stop thinking about Angela Davis, a woman who had grown up without a mother, who spent her life taking care of other people's children and homes. A woman who had heard the cries of children and felt compelled to help them, even if it meant risking her own life. Keisha thought about her own daughter, sleeping safe and sound in her mansion across town. She thought about Marcus, a 10-year-old boy living on the streets because his mother had answered a call that no one else could hear. And she thought about the house on Maple Street, standing empty and waiting. Keisha knew she had to go to the house, not to renovate it or sell it, but to understand what had happened to Angela and the other women. She couldn't let Marcus grow up thinking his mother had abandoned him for no reason. She picked up Marcus from the park the next morning. "I want to show you something," she said. "But I need you to trust me." They drove to Maple Street in silence. When they pulled up to the house, Marcus gripped her hand tightly. "I don't want to go in there," he whispered. "We're not going inside," Keisha said. "We're just going to look around outside." As they walked around the house, Keisha noticed something she had missed before. Behind the house, partly hidden by overgrown bushes, was a small building. It looked like it might have been a servant's quarters or a carriage house. "Marcus, look at this," she said, pointing to the small building. They pushed through the bushes and found a door. It was unlocked. Inside, the small room was dusty and filled with old furniture covered in sheets. But on one wall, Keisha saw something that made her heart stop. There were dozens of pictures tacked to the wall. Pictures of children. Some looked like they were from the 1920s, others from more recent times. All of the children in the pictures looked sad or scared. "These are the children," Marcus said quietly. "The ones Mama heard crying." Keisha looked closer at the pictures. Some had names written on the back. "The Harrington children," she read. "Sarah, age 6. Thomas, age 4. Baby Mary, age 2. "Who were they?" Marcus asked. "They were the children who died in the fire in 1928, Keisha said. "But Marcus, look at these other pictures." Mixed in with the old photographs were more recent pictures. Pictures of children who looked neglected or frightened. Some looked like they had been torn from newspapers or magazines. At the bottom of the wall, they found a small wooden box. Inside were handwritten letters. The handwriting was shaky, but Keisha could make out some of the words. "Dear children," one letter began. "I hear you crying at night. I know you're scared and alone. I want to help you find peace." The letters were signed with different names: Ruby Johnson, Carol Washington, and at the bottom of the pile, Angela Davis. "Your mama was trying to help them," Keisha said to Marcus. "She heard their cries and she couldn't ignore them." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "But how can we help children who are already dead?" Keisha thought about that question. How do you help children who died almost 100 years ago? How do you give peace to souls who have been trapped in sadness for so long? Then she realized something. The women who had been drawn to the house all had something in common. They had all spent their lives taking care of children, but they had all lost their own mothers at a young age. They understood what it felt like to be abandoned and alone. "Marcus," she said, "I think your mama figured out something important before she died. I think she knew how to help the children find peace." "How?" "By making sure they weren't forgotten. By making sure someone cared about them and remembered their names." As they stood in the small room, surrounded by pictures of children who had died long ago, Keisha felt something shift in the air. It was as if the house itself was listening, waiting to see what they would do next. Over the next few weeks, Keisha and Marcus worked together to research each child in the photographs. They found out about the Harrington children who had died in the fire. They learned about other children who had lived in the house over the years and had died young from illness or accidents. For each child, they created a small memorial. They planted flowers in the yard and put up a small plaque with the children's names and dates. They cleaned up the small building behind the house and turned it into a memorial room. But most importantly, Keisha realized that Marcus needed more than just a temporary place to stay. She started the process to become his legal guardian. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said one day as they worked in the garden. "I know you have your own family." "Marcus," Keisha said, stopping her work to look at him, "your mama spent her whole life taking care of other people's children. She heard the cries of children who needed help, and she couldn't turn away. I think she would want me to take care of you the same way she tried to take care of those children in the house. The night before the memorial service they had planned, Marcus and Keisha spent one last night in the house. They had cleaned it up and made it safe, but they had decided not to renovate it. Instead, they were going to donate it to a local charity that helped homeless families. As they sat in the main room, reading by lamplight, Marcus suddenly looked up. "Do you hear that?" Keisha listened carefully. At first, she didn't hear anything. Then, very softly, she heard what sounded like children laughing and playing. "They're not crying anymore," Marcus whispered. The next morning, dozens of people came to the memorial service. Some were neighbors who had heard about the house and its history. Others were people who worked with homeless children and families. Keisha's own daughter, Amara, came with the nanny. As they stood in the garden, surrounded by the flowers they had planted, Keisha read the names of all the children who had lived in the house over the years. For each name, Marcus rang a small bell. "These children were loved," Keisha said. "They were remembered. And because of that, they can finally rest in peace." After the service, as people were leaving, an elderly woman approached Keisha. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm Ruby Johnson's daughter. My mother was one of the women who died trying to help the children in this house." Keisha felt tears in her eyes. Your mother was a hero. She heard children crying, and she tried to help them. "Thank you for finishing what she started," the woman said. "I think she can finally rest now too." As the sun set that evening, Keisha and Marcus stood on the front porch of the house. It looked different now, peaceful and welcoming instead of dark and frightening. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we go home," Keisha said. "To our home. And we start our life together as a family." As they walked to the car, Marcus turned back one more time to look at the house. The windows seemed to glow with a warm, golden light, and for just a moment, he could swear he saw the shapes of children waving goodbye from the windows. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered. "Thank you for helping them find peace." 6 months later, Keisha and Marcus were sitting in their kitchen, helping Amara with her homework. The adoption papers had been finalized, and Marcus was officially part of their family. "Mama Keisha," Marcus said, using the name he had started calling her. "Do you think my first mama is proud of what we did?" Keisha smiled and pulled him close. "I think she's very proud. And I think she's happy that you're safe and loved." The house on Maple Street still stood, but now it was home to 3 families who had nowhere else to go. The memorial garden was tended by volunteers, and the children's names were never forgotten. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, neighbors said they could hear the sound of children laughing and playing in the yard. But it was a happy sound now, full of joy and peace. Marcus had found a family, the lost children had found peace, and Keisha had learned that sometimes the greatest success comes not from building wealth, but from building a home where everyone feels safe and loved.